Hello, I am Emily Norman, the Church of England Education Office's Head of Curriculum and Inclusion, and together with my colleague Lorraine.Prince, who is our Head of Networks, we're going to explain to you how CEFL's peer support networks will operate in the academic year 2022 to 2023. So let's start by looking at the reasons why you might want to host a Church of England Foundation for Educational Leadership peer support network. Our networks have been running for the last 5 years and they are grounded in research and network methodology around what we know works for school leaders. We've already seen around 1,500 school leaders nationally access these networks and take this learning back into their own contexts, having created those communities of practice that have enabled them to discuss school leadership issues. Because of our national resources, we're able to provide stimuli around leadership, pedagogy and theology from a wide range of experts, both in this country and overseas, that can help really stimulate challenging questions that underpin the discussions in our networks. Our supportive framework enables reflective conversations amongst leaders that really get them to self-evaluate and think about what might they do differently as a result of what they have been learning. And these conversations can really enable transformation within our school contexts. And finally, this is an opportunity for people to learn collaboratively. So our networks are not a course. The networks are actually driven by the people in the networks thinking about what it is that they would like to explore together. And they are sharply focused on putting vision into practice to raise achievement and ensure the best possible outcomes for our children and young people. And they're also safe spaces for personal growth and the well-being and development of leaders.
The mission of the Church of England Education Office is to deliver called, connected and committed school leaders through reflecting on a personal sense of vocation, connecting and forming a relationship with other school leaders to solve big problems, and committing to making transformative changes.
So this diagram sets out our approach to our peer support networks for 2022 to 2023. At the heart of every network that we run, there is the desire to want to see our vision put into practice. How can our vision be translated into the way that we lead and the way that we teach within our schools? We also want to develop impactful leaders, leaders who are learning how to be called, connected and committed, and who are seeing a real transformation within their contexts. And to that end, we have a range of topics that we're able to offer. So our core offer looks at the curriculum. So what is our vision for our curriculum? What is it that we want to see our children and young people learning about? And how is that developing and evolving? We're looking at teaching and learning and our pedagogical approach and the difference that that makes. We're thinking about courageous advocacy. How can our children and young people develop into the sort of courageous advocates that our society really needs? How can we take care of the well-being of children, of young people, staff, families, but also of our school leaders who have been so particularly impacted by the pandemic in the last 2 years? And how can we think about inclusion, and how can we think about what it is that our children and young people need to feel like they can truly belong within their school communities and they can access every possibility, that sense of what does it look like for every child to have a hope and a future. And then beyond that, going beyond that, there are very particular topics that we have been introducing in recent times based on the need that there is in our system and the real desire that school leaders have to take these particular things really, really seriously and act differently. In the last year, we've been looking at how we can become trauma informed to really meet the needs of our most vulnerable children. we've been looking at racial justice and the moral imperative we have to really look at how our children from a range of different backgrounds are able to flourish in school, and what we need to do if they are not, and how we can seek that justice that we want for our children. And then our children with special educational needs and disabilities, how we can support the leadership of SEND within our schools. We're wanting to support existing systems around religious education and link people up with subject-specific networks that are running locally. And we also have a link through to our MPQ programs where resources from those MPQs are shared within our networks. But equally, people who have taken an MPQ might then want to think about being involved in a network that actually takes their learning on further. And for secondary school leaders, there's the opportunity to dig into a number of these different topics over 2 years. So one of the questions people often have is, well, that sounds great, but how much is it going to cost me? We have put together a pricing schedule that makes this as affordable as we possibly can. We haven't raised our prices over the last few years. We've stuck with a price freeze to make sure that we're not putting any extra burden on dioceses or multi-academy trusts looking to run this. We need to cover our costs, and as anyone operating in this space will. So you'll see there the way that we've worked this out in terms of the different pricing structures for different types of networks. And in case it's helpful, what we've done is we've broken down how much that would be per school if you were to think about how much that is going to cost if a school were going to pay for it, or if we're going to subsidise a school or make it available to them. So we hope that's a helpful way of looking at it. We're able to offer just a training package, training and resources, if that's what some dioceses or MATs would find helpful, some co-facilitation, either virtually or a mix of face-to-face and virtual. For those organisations that are keen to have a fully facilitated network from CEFL, that's something that we can discuss with you if you want to get in touch with us. We've put together an indicative pricing structure for our SEND and trauma networks. This is something that in the past has been subsidised very heavily by grants, and we continue to seek grants. So it may be that we're able to subsidise these again in the future. But in terms of having an idea of what sort of cost you might be thinking about for those networks, we've set that out there. We've kept it as cheap as we possibly can to enable as many schools, as many dioceses, as many MATs to take part as possible.
The National Secondary Leaders Network was formed in 2018 to allow Church of England secondary schools to network together on crucial leadership development issues at a national level. Membership is on a school-to-school basis, enabling access for different members of the leadership team who are called to leadership and want to connect with other senior leaders and commit to furthering education that serves the common good. The National Secondary Leaders Network provides opportunities to participate in high-profile national events, regional hub activities, and online resources. The National Secondary Leaders Network delivery model is £1 per student on roll up to 750 students.
Lastly, we've set out some example next steps. So I talked earlier about how participants on the MPQs currently might like to think about what their next steps could be. So if they are on a particular course, for example, leading teaching, what sort of networks would be appropriate for them to join following the end of that course to extend and develop their learning beyond the course. So here are some examples for the MPQ for leading teaching, the MPQ for leading teacher development, and the MPQ for leading behaviour and culture. Similarly, on this slide for our MPQ for senior leaders, for head teachers or those in the additional support offer or early headship coaching offer, and then those leaders that are part of the MPQ for executive leadership. Here are some options that people might want to get involved in.
Follow us on Twitter for all the latest updates. And if you have any questions regarding networks and events, contact lorraine.prince@churchofengland.org.